Fadl Allah Abu Taghlib al-Ghadanfar ʿUddat al-Dawla, usually known simply by his kunya as Abu Taghlib, was the third Hamdanid ruler of the Emirate of Mosul, encompassing most of the Jazira. His reign was troubled, being marked by conflicts with some of his brothers, antagonism with the various branches of the Buyids for influence in Baghdad, and attacks by the Byzantine Empire under John I Tzimiskes. His relations with the Buyid emir of Iraq,His al-Dawla Bakhtiyar, were initially hostile, but the two late concluded an alliance. In 978, the Jazira was occupied by the Buyids of Shiraz under ʿUddat al-Dawla, and he fled to the Fatimid-controlled parts of Syria, where he tried to secure the governorship of Damascus, and became involved in local rivalries which resulted in his defeat in battle and execution on the 29th of August 979. Origin and background. Abu Taghlib was the eldest son of al-Hasan, better known by his laqab of Nazir al-Dawla, who had established the Hamdanids as masters of a practically independent emirate encompassing the Jazira and centered on Mosul. Nazir al-Dawla engaged in repeated attempts to gain control over the Abbasid caliphs at Baghdad, but in the end was forced to concede defeat to the more powerful Buyids, recognize the suzerainty and pay them tribute. At the same time, Nazir al-Dawla's younger brother Ali, better known as Saif al-Dawla, managed to establish his control over northern Syria from his two capitals Aleppo and Mayafariqin, and through his clashes with the Byzantine Empire quickly overshadowed his brother. However, the last decade of Saif al-Dawla's rule, until his death in February 967, was marked by heavy military defeats at the hands of the Byzantines, who occupied much of his domains, and internal turmoil. It was in this context that Abu Taghlib is first mentioned in 964, when his father had once again been embroiled in a conflict with the Buyids. The army of the Buyid Mu'iz al-Dawla occupied Mosul, and Nazir al-Dawla was once again forced to flee to the hill country of the northern Jazira. Abu Taghlib led the resistance against the Buyids, who, unable to maintain themselves there, evacuated Mosul and reached a new agreement with the Hamdanids. Consequently, Nazir al-Dawla was now increasingly eclipsed by his sons, and was deposed outright and exiled in 967. Dying in captivity shortly after, Abu Taghlib, surnamed al-Ghadanfar, succeeded his father as emir and head of the Jazira branch of the Hamdanid family. But almost immediately his authority was contested by a younger half-brother, Hamdan. Nazir al-Dawla had entrusted the latter with the governance of Nisibis, Maradin and Rabah shortly before his deposition, and may have intended to name him as his heir over Abu Taghlib. Hamdan was indeed the only son of Nazir al-Dawla to protest his father's deposition, and refused to recognize Abu Taghlib. With the aid of the new Buyid emir of Iraq,His al-Dawla Bakhtiyar, Abu Taghlib prevailed over Hamdan, who fled to Baghdad. In addition, Abu Taghlib used the conditions of near anarchy prevailing in Syria at the time and after Saif al-Dawla's death to expand his territory at the expense of his cousin, Sadr al-Dawla. Upon Saif al-Dawla's death, Abu Taghlib seized al-Raqqa and Rafiqa, and by 971 he had extended his control over all of Diyar Bakka and Diyar Muda, once part of Saif al-Dawla's domain, uniting the entire Jazira under his rule. Sadr al-Dawla, deprived of his own capital and lacking any power to offer any resistance, tacitly accepted these losses as well as his cousin's suzerainty. As ruler of the Jazira, Abu Taghlib was one of the richest rulers of the region. Ibn Hawqal's descriptions attest to the wealth derived from the many Hamdanid estates, and Ibn Miskawayh, who was tasked with inventorying the family's mountain strongholds after the Buyid dissolution of the Hamdanid Emirate in 979. rights of the immense cash reserves stored there. Relations with the Buyids were initially good, as Abu Talib, unlike his father, had no direct claim on Baghdad, and Bakhtiyar himself was too preoccupied with affairs in Iraq and elsewhere to focus his attention on the Jazira. However, the Buyid prince offered refuge to Hamdan and other disgruntled members of the Hamdanid clan and intervened in the Hamdanid family quarrels. Thus in 970 Hamdan was restored in Rabah thanks to Buyid pressure, only to be chased away again in 971. The exiled prince now urged Bakhtiyar to make war on Abu Talib. In 973 the Buyids once again occupied Mosul, while Abu Talib with his army outflanked them and threatened Baghdad. The conflict ended in a negotiated settlement in 974 that included in its provisions the award of the laqab of ʿUddat al-Dawla to Abu Talib by the Caliph and the restoration of Hamdan to his domains. During the same period, Abu Talib also faced the attacks of the Byzantines, who under Emperor John I Tzimiskes penetrated deep into the Jazira, forcing the Hamdanids to pay tribute. The devastating raids of 972 were partly avenged through the defeat and capture of the domestic of the school's milias at Fatimid in 973. But in 974 Tzimiskes himself raided the Jazira in retaliation. In 973 to 975, Abu Talib supported Bakhtiyar in his own struggles to safeguard his power. Thus he once again marched on Baghdad during the rebellion of the Turkish military commander Taken. Although it was the intervention of the Buyid emir of Shiraz, ʿUddat al-Dawla, that decided the conflict for Bakhtiyar. As a result of his assistance, in 975 Abu Talib secured a revision of the earlier treaty which freed him from the payment of tribute. In 976, following the death of Tzimiskes, Abu Talib agreed to support the bid for the Byzantine throne of the rebel general Jazira.His, with whom he concluded a treaty whereby the Hamdanid ruler supplied Jazira.His with light cavalry in exchange for an unspecified marriage agreement. In 977, as Bakhtiyar found himself driven from Baghdad by the ambitious ʿUddat al-Dawla, he turned again to the Hamdanids for aid. Abu Talib agreed to support him in exchange for the handing over of Hamdan, who was promptly executed. Although this secured Abu Talib's position in his family, it also brought him to the attention of ʿUddat al-Dawla. In May 978, Bakhtiyar and Abu Talib were defeated in a battle near Samarra by ʿUddat al-Dawla. Bakhtiyar himself was captured and executed at the orders of ʿUddat al-Dawla, who then advanced on Mosul. Unlike earlier Buyid expeditions against the Hamdanids that had failed chiefly because they were unable to sustain themselves in the Jazira, this was far better organized, as ʿUddat al-Dawla brought along experienced administrators familiar with the area. The Buyids took Mosul and forced Abu Talib to flee to Fatimid and then to the mountains of Armenia, while the Buyids laid siege to Fatimid. He even visited Jazira.His in Byzantine territory in Anzitin, trying to secure his assistance, but in vain, for Jazira.His too was hard-pressed by the loyalist general Buyid. After the fall of Fatimid in 978, Abu Talib fled to Rabah, from where he tried in vain to negotiate with ʿUddat al-Dawla. Exile and death, with the Buyid troops completing the conquest of the Jazira, and unable to seek aid from his cousin Saad al-Dawla, who had already acknowledged ʿUddat al-Dawla's suzerainty and was under orders to arrest him. Abu Talib with his remaining followers crossed the Syrian desert to the Fatimid-controlled south of Syria. There he became embroiled in the complex power struggles between the Fatimid government and local elites. He endeavored to gain recognition by the Fatimids as governor of Damascus, but the rebel general al-Qassam, who held the city, repulsed him. Under attack by the Damascenes, and with members of his family starting to desert him, Abu Talib moved further south to the region of Lake Tiberias. Abu Talib's ambitions and his contacts with the Fatimids now came to threaten the position of Mufarreh ibn Dafil ibn al-Jarrah, a Tayy chief and ruler of Ramla. Hoping to sow dissension among the Arab tribes of the area and strengthen Fatimid authority, the Fatimid general Fadl now promised Ramla to Abu Talib, who openly allied himself with Mufarreh's rivals, the Banu Uqayl, and attacked Ramla in August 979. Fadl's troops, however, came to the aid of Mufarreh, and in the ensuing battle on the 29th of August Abu Talib was taken captive and executed. The Jazira remained under Buyid control until 989, when Abu Talib's brothers Abu Abdullah Hussein and Abu Tahir Ibrahim, who had submitted to the Buyids, were installed as governors to oppose the power of the Kurdish chieftain Buyid, who had taken control of Mosul. In this fight, the two brothers relied upon the Uqaylists. After the defeat of Buyid, the Banu Uqayl turned on the Hamdanids and deposed and killed Abu Tahir Ibrahim, establishing the Uqaylid dynasty as the rulers of the Jazira.